Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I am Ghazan Farali and in this channel you'll find solution to economic and finance problem. Today our topic is inflation. Inflation is basically the rise in the general level of prices. And if we look at the impact of inflation in the long run, it erodes the consumer's purchasing power. That means accumulated wealth purchases less and less with the passage of time, and it makes poor people poorer. When there is high inflation, it is difficult for businesses to plan for the future as there is uncertainty regarding the cost of production or the cost of raw materials. Inflation results when the macroeconomy has too much demand for available production. The process of inflation has been classified into two major categories. Number one, demand pull inflation, and number two, cost push inflation. Now we take up the first one, that is demand pull inflation. What is demand pull inflation? This is a type of inflation which occurs when household businesses, government, and foreign industries collectively try to purchase more output than the economy is capable of producing. Or, in other words, when the aggregate demand exceeds the aggregate supply. In effect, the demand side of the aggregate market is pulling the price level higher. On the other hand, cost push inflation is the inflation which is because of decrease in supply, primarily because of increase in cost of production. When cost of production or raw material like taxes, prices of input, or political situation becomes unfavorable, the aggregate supply curve shifts to the left while demand remaining the same, so prices will start rising. And this is what we call cost push inflation. Now we will explain the cost push inflation with the help of a diagram. In this diagram, the price is on the y-axis and the real national output or GDP on the x-axis. The downward sloping curve shows the aggregate demand, and the upward sloping curves show the aggregate supply. As cost of production increases, it causes the aggregate supply curve to shift onward, or you can say leftward, so less is supplied at each price level. And each time the aggregate supply curve shifts leftward, the price starts rising, which results in inflation, which is the increase in the price level of goods and services. The second type of inflation is the demand pull inflation. Now we explain the demand pull inflation with the help of a diagram. In this diagram, the price level is on the y-axis and the real GDP is on the x-axis. The upward sloping curve is the supply curve, and the downward sloping curve is the demand curve. As aggregate demand increases or rises, while aggregate supply remaining the same, the price level rises. When total demand exceeds total supply, demand pull inflation occurs, or prices will start increasing. As we came to the conclusion that inflation is a serious predicament or problem for an economy, therefore, it is very important to control or prevent the inflation. Normally, there are two ways by which inflation is controlled. The first one is used by the central bank. Central bank uses contractionary monetary policy to control the level of inflation. And contractionary monetary policy means central bank will increase the rate of interest to curb the supply of money. On the other hand, government also uses the tool of fiscal policy to control inflation. Government will use contractionary fiscal policy for the purpose of controlling inflation. Contractionary fiscal policy means government will increase the level of taxes and decreases public expenditure. With this, I conclude today's lecture. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe for more educational videos.